All right, you guys, we're going to talk about the dynamic effort variations of this conjugate-ish program number 3. Again, to repeat myself, this program is based off of the conjugate method, which was developed by Louis Simmons and company of Westside Barbell. I'm not trying to make this any program that's going to develop a top-notch power lifter, okay? My goal with this was to introduce a different way of doing things, and also introduce kind of some different variations that you may or may not be familiar with. So it's a lot of information. I know it might be overwhelming, but even if you don't use this program, at least you might learn something from it, and you can take some things from this that you might use in other programs. So with the conjugate method in this program, you've got 4 training days a week that are strength focused, okay? So we have 2 max effort days where we're working up to a 1 to 5 rep max, focusing on what they call special exercises, or in other words, just different variations of the squat, bench, and deadlift as their basic, in their basic forms, okay? So with the dynamic effort days, the emphasis is going to be on speed, okay? I have to say also too, though, when we're talking lifting, as far as like the barbell lifts go in the powerlifting type lifts, okay? So we're not talking Olympic weightlifting. Those lifts are obviously done explosively, okay? I feel like a lot of people, when we cross over into the powerlifting type lifts, we're working with heavy loads. A lot of people assume that you're going to be going slow because you're lifting heavier weight, which it may feel slow as molasses, okay? But you always want to have the intent behind each and every rep that you perform that you're moving the bar as quickly as possible, okay? So the emphasis should always be on accelerating the bar regardless of what load is on the bar, okay? So with the dynamic effort days, what I really like about this aspect of the program is that I took full advantage of the use of every minute on the minute or on the minute type scheme here. So, or an EMOM, as y'all are familiar with, but every 30 to 90 seconds is what I typically recommend you to be used with the dynamic effort sets. Okay, so it's kind of nifty because you're working with light loads here. So initially what's kind of funny is that you'll start off and you're like, okay, this is easy. But then like halfway into your sets, you start feeling it, okay? Because you're not getting to fully recover rest-wise in between each set. So the dynamic effort days can really become kind of conditioning, okay? So it's kind of neat. So with the dynamic effort days, what we're going to do is we're going to keep the same lifts for 3 weeks and then start over in week 4. So with this program, the block is comprised of 4 weeks, okay? The max effort days, I have it set up where you do, if we're talking upper body, you've got 1 max effort. So week 1, you got, let's say, floor press for your max effort. Week 2, you've got overhead press for your max effort. And then week 3, we have wide grip bench press for your max effort day. In week 4, what I designed this to have is we bring back the basic bench press and hit a single at a percentage with that. And then you repeat the cycle for 2 more blocks, okay? So with a dynamic effort days, what we're going to do is we're going to keep the same variation of the lift for each week, for week 1, week 2, week 3, and then in week 4, you're going to rotate to a new 3-week block using that a different variation. Okay, so you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. So the dynamic effort, upper body, and Olympic lift variations, I given y'all a pretty broad range. I feel like if you're kind of iffy about any of this, it's better to start on the conservative side of things rather than try to overload, okay? So you'll know very soon whether or not you've used too much loading on the dynamic effort work, because it'll feel like you can't move the bar. So especially if you use accommodating resistance. So again, just start off maybe too easy, and then the worst that can happen is you just make amends for that and go a little bit heavier next time. So 65 to 85% of your 1 rep max range for your upper body and Olympic lift variations here. If you're using bands or chains, I would suggest 40 to 60% of your max plus roughly 25% of your max in band tension or chain weight, okay? It might be that it's a little bit lighter than that. That's okay. So 6 to 8 sets of 2 to 3 reps every 60 to 90 seconds. Again, this is just an estimation. Sometimes I like to go 45 seconds or even 30 seconds. You've got some, this isn't set in stone, but it's given you some basic rules here. So some options as far as variations go. We've got push press, floor press, various grips on the floor press, push jerk, bench press. Again, we got various lifts. So you got close grip bench press, competition grip or regular grip bench press, and then a wide grip, okay? Hang power snatch or a hang clean and a push press. So with these guys, again, we can use bands or chains to kind of mix things up, okay? So for the dynamic effort lower body variations, the range that I recommend is 60 to 70% of your 1 rep max. Just as with the upper body and Olympic, 40 to 60% if you're using accommodating resistance. With these, I recommend 8 to 12 sets of 2 to 4 reps every 45 to 60 seconds. Some options are speed back squat, speed front squat, sumo or conventional deadlift with bands, box squats, power or a squat clean, power clean, squat clean, regular clean for those of y'all that think squat clean is a goofy term, safety bar box squat. So again, we got bands or chains as an option. So what I'm gonna do is flip over this way. So to repeat myself from the previous video, you wanna have 72 hours in between your max effort upper body day and your dynamic effort upper body day, and respectively with the lower body too. So newbies, I also wanted to add, as far as like these percentages I laid out, and again, it's never a bad idea to start off maybe a little bit too light, but for people who are newer to this style of training, you could hang within the 40 to 60% range for all of the variations for squat, deadlift, and for upper body or Olympic, for 8 to 12 sets of 2 to 3, okay? Again, it's a ballpark, and you know, to repeat myself for the gazillionth time, this isn't the way to do things, okay? This is my variation on this method and how I've incorporated it with group in my group training model here. So to lay out a progression for you guys to show the 3-week rotations for the dynamic effort work for upper body, what we're going to do in week 1, I chose a speed floor press, okay? You could just say floor press. I just said speed floor press because it drives the point home that our intent is to put some speed behind the bar. So 12 sets of 3 at 40%, okay, of your floor press 1 rep max. So you want to change the grip every 4 sets. So with this, I mean, you don't have to do it this way, but it kind of introduces a little bit more variation up in there. So you would do 4 sets with close grip, 4 sets with regular grip, and then 4 sets with wide grip, okay? So that's a total of 12 sets. So these are done every 60 seconds. For week 2, you take the speed floor press again. We got 10 sets of 3 at 45%, changing the grip every 2 sets, every 60 seconds, okay? And then week 3, we got speed floor press, 9 sets of 3 at 50%, changing the grip every 3 sets, every 60 seconds, okay? So here's where we change things up. In week 4, we're going to shift. We're going to shift over to a speed bench press, okay? So we're going to do 12 sets of 3 at 40%. I kept the same percentages for the bench press. So 12 sets of 3 at 40%, changing the grip every 4 sets. And so second week that you're using this variation is 10 sets of 3 at 45%, changing the grip every 2 sets. And then the third week that you're using this variation, 9 sets of 3 at 50%, changing the grip every 3 sets. So you can see how, like, I have it laid out here, like the blocks for the overall program. We've got week 3 here for this third of the 3 weeks of this first variation of the speed floor press. So in week 4, we shift to the speed bench press. Okay, so that doesn't map, or that doesn't line up with the start of the new block, but that's okay. So speed bench press, it goes for 3 weeks. We're going to introduce another variation after those 3 weeks with a speed bench press. So we're going to go to a speed bench press with chains. We're going to get crazy here, okay? Again, chains may not be feasible for you for use with your groups, but I just threw this in here to illustrate it. So 6 sets of 3 at 40% plus 25% of your 1 rep max in chain weight, okay? Again, if you don't have that much as far as like weight of chains, it's no big deal, okay? So it's kind of one of those things. We're not training people, like I said before, not training people to become like elite powerlifters here. And the worst that can happen is it's trial and error to a certain degree, okay? As with a lot of this, it is with what we do with people. So try it out, see what happens. If it's too easy, then you just know for the next time around to change it up a little bit. So change the grip every 3 seconds. For the second week of this speed bench with chains, we're going 9 sets of 2 at 45% plus the 25% in change weight, changing the grip every 3 sets. And then the third week, which is the final week of using this variation, so the speed bench with the chains, 8 sets of 2 at 50%, using the same chain weight, change the grip every 2 sets. So for the last, so this would be week 10 within this 12-week program. Week 10, we're going back to the speed floor press, okay? And we're going to increase the loading just a little bit. So I have 10 sets of 3 at 50%, changing the grip every 2 sets. The second week that you're performing that movement, the speed floor press, 8 sets of 3 at 55%, changing the grip every 2 sets. And then the third and final week with the speed floor press is going to be 8 sets of 3 at 60%, changing the grip every 2 sets. So obviously light loads, more sets of very few reps, okay? Easy, but you're moving the bar as fast as you can move it on the press or putting that intent behind it. And we're working with that EMOM format here. So every 60 seconds you're hitting a set. So that's the dynamic effort progression sample for upper body.